Hey guys, tonight we're lighting a very unfortunate bonfire in colonial America. Not the cozy campfire with marshmallows kind. The kind where your neighbours gather around because they've decided your personality is suspicious. We're talking about witches. Not the pointy hat, green skin, eye of newt kind. I mean real women. Normal women. Women who baked bread, raised kids, owned cats, or, God forbid, had opinions. So before we start accusing you of consorting with Satan because your butter churned wrong, take a second to like the video and subscribe, only if you genuinely enjoy being here. A huge thank you to everyone who suggested this topic. And if there's another unsettling, ridiculous moment in history you want us to wander into next, drop it in the comments. It's always 2 a.m. somewhere, and history's never done embarrassing itself. Now dim the lights, put on a fan for that soft colonial wind through the trees ambience, get comfortable, and maybe pull the blanket up just a little higher. You never know who's watching. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what it took to be accused of witchcraft in colonial America? Was it actually about magic, or just bad vibes and worse neighbours? Could a woman really be executed because a cow sneezed wrong? What happens when religion, fear, boredom and gossip all collide in a tiny wooden village with no internet and way too much free time? Would you survive a society where being quiet was suspicious, being outspoken was dangerous, and being unlucky was basically a death sentence? Could you go a single day without accidentally doing something that looked witchy? Congratulations, you've just woken up in colonial New England. The year is 1692. Your house is drafty, your neighbours are tense, and someone is already watching how you walk. Good luck. You wake up before dawn, wrapped in rough blankets, listening to the wind scrape against your wooden house. Nothing is wrong yet, which, unfortunately, is already suspicious. In colonial America, peace is temporary, and calm is usually the calm before someone accuses you of something unspeakable. The air inside your house is cold enough to make you question every life choice that led you here. The blankets itch, everything itches. Wool has that special talent. You lie still for a moment, listening to the familiar noises of a building that is technically standing. The boards creak, the roof sighs. Somewhere, a mouse is having an ambitious morning. This is all normal, too normal. You wait, just in case something dramatic happens on its own. It doesn't. Eventually you sit up, careful and slow, because sudden movements feel reckless. The straw mattress complains softly beneath you, crunching like it's filing a report. You swing your legs over the side and plant your feet on the floor, which is less a floor and more a suggestion of one. Cold rushes up through the boards immediately. You hiss quietly and then stop, because making noise before sunrise feels like a confession. Getting dressed is not a casual activity, it's a calculated performance. You choose clothes that say, "I belong here," but also say, "I am not enjoying myself too much." Too clean looks prideful, too worn looks lazy, too neat suggests vanity, too messy suggests moral weakness. You aim for aggressively average. Beige, but emotionally. As you pull your dress over your head, you pause to think about yesterday. Did you speak too much? Not enough? Did you smile at the wrong person? Did you fail to smile at the right one? You replay conversations like they're evidence because in a way they are. Memory is a dangerous thing in a small village. You tie your shoes carefully. Bent over too long looks furtive. Standing upright too proudly looks defiant. You straighten slowly, like someone who has nothing to hide and absolutely everything to lose. Before opening the door, you stop. This is not superstition. This is strategy. The outside world is already awake, and it is observant. You take a breath, shallow and controlled. Deep breathing suggests excitement, and excitement is never explained favourably. When you step outside, the cold greets you like an accusation. The sky's grey, undecided. Smoke rises from a few chimneys, thin and watchful, like the village itself hasn't had its coffee yet but is still very aware of your existence. Someone is already up. Someone always is. You wonder if they noticed what time you came out. You wonder if they care. You wonder if caring comes later. The ground is hard beneath your feet, packed dirt and frost, uneven in a way that forces you to walk carefully. Tripping would draw attention. Walking too confidently would also draw attention. You settle on a cautious shuffle, the official walk of someone who does not want to be remembered. As you move toward the well or the firewood or whatever task will justify your presence outside, you feel eyes on you. Maybe they are real. Maybe they are imagined. The distinction doesn't matter much anymore. You nod politely at anyone you pass, not too warmly. Warmth implies familiarity. Familiarity invites stories. The morning smells like smoke and damp earth. A dog barks somewhere, then stops abruptly, as if it too remembers the rules. You listen for footsteps behind you, not because you expect anything to happen right now, but because expecting nothing feels irresponsible. This is how the day begins. Quietly, carefully, with you doing everything right and still feeling slightly wrong. And that's the trick of it. In a world like this, innocence doesn't protect you. It just makes you confusing. And confusing things, sooner or later, get explained away. So you keep moving. You keep your head down. You survive the morning by not standing out. And for now, that is enough. Your home is small, cold, and filled with objects that could all be interpreted as evidence. A broom, a kettle, some dried herbs. You look around and realize that every item you own could be presented in court later with a dramatic gasp. The walls lean inward slightly, not enough to collapse, just enough to feel judgmental. The room smells like smoke, old wood, and yesterday's efforts to stay alive. There is no privacy here. Every sound echoes. Every object has a purpose, and unfortunately also a second, more sinister interpretation, if viewed by the wrong person on the wrong day. You glance at the broom resting against the wall. It's just a broom. You use it to sweep dirt out the door because the floor is dirt. This should not be controversial, and yet you don't touch it right now. Touching it feels like tempting fate. You leave it where it is, innocent but deeply misunderstood. The kettle sits near the hearth, blackened from years of use. You boil water in it. That's the whole story. Except boiling water is suspicious if someone later decides it was a potion, or a charm, or a brew. No one ever seems impressed that you were just trying to make something warm that wouldn't kill you. Above the hearth hang bundles of dried plants, tied neatly with string. You know exactly what they're for. Mint for stomach aches. Sage because it grows easily. Something bitter you once learned helps with swelling. Practical knowledge. Generational knowledge. Unfortunately, it also looks like witchcraft if you squint hard enough and already don't like someone. You consider taking them down, but taking them down looks guilty. Leaving them up looks confident. Confidence is dangerous. You decide to leave them exactly as they are and hope neutrality is still an option. Your table is rough and scarred, covered in small nicks from years of cutting bread, trimming fabric, setting things down too hard when you were tired. You run your hand over it absent-mindedly and stop halfway through, realizing even that could look strange if someone were watching. You pull your hand back and clasp it politely in front of you, like you're visiting your own home for the first time. There's a small chest in the corner with your extra things, letters, a spare shawl, a broken spoon you meant to fix. Nothing dangerous. Everything personal. Personal things make people uncomfortable. They suggest inner lives. Inner lives are hard to control. You think briefly about what would happen if someone came inside uninvited. They wouldn't see a home. They'd see a narrative, a story they could tell themselves about you. And stories, once told, are difficult to stop. The fire crackles softly, low and tired. You kneel to stir it, and immediately wonder if kneeling looks ritualistic. You stand back up again, heart beating faster than necessary. You remind yourself that people kneel all the time, for prayer, for work, for survival. Still, you keep your movements slow and obvious. You want anyone watching to understand exactly what you're doing, even though you don't know who that might be. Light filters in through the small window, catching dust in the air. The dust floats lazily, completely unconcerned with how it looks. You envy it. This house has heard everything. Your sighs, your muttered frustrations, the nights you sat alone too long with your thoughts. It knows things about you that no one else does, and that makes it dangerous. Not because it will tell, but because if asked, it could be made to speak. You straighten the room, not to clean it, but to make it look understandable, predictable, safe. You arrange objects so they make sense at a glance. Nothing hidden, nothing secret. You are curating your own innocence. When you finally step back and look around, the house looks exactly as it should. Plain, functional, quiet. It does not look like a place where anything strange could happen, and yet you know better. Because houses like this don't cause trouble, they just remember it. It's time for breakfast. You stir porridge over the fire, hoping it thickens correctly. Because if it doesn't, someone will notice. And if someone notices, they will absolutely remember it later. The kitchen is barely more than a shadowy corner near the hearth, smoky and close, the air thick with last night's ashes. Your hands work by habit, but your mind is already running scenarios. You measure oats by sight, water by instinct, and pray no one thinks you're measuring too carefully, which might be interpreted as hiding a secret recipe, something you don't want to explain if the wrong person starts asking. The fire spits and snaps. You wince, not just from the heat, but from the idea that a single burnt smell drifting out the window will get filed away as another oddity. The logic is simple. Witches ruin breakfast. Or maybe, people who ruin breakfast become witches. In either case, the stakes are tragically high for a bowl of porridge. You stir with your right hand, because stirring with your left could be a bad omen if anyone's in the mood for omens. Sometimes you catch yourself tracing a circle, then switch to a straight line, just in case anyone peeks through the window and decides you're casting a spell instead of just trying to keep things from sticking to the bottom. Your neighbour's rooster crows at an absurd hour, probably on purpose. You imagine he's warning you. They're watching. Every sound carries. Every movement is a potential headline for the village's morning rumour mill. As you reach for the salt, you pause. Too much seasoning means you're trying too hard. Too little, you're neglectful. Adding honey is considered extravagant, maybe even sinful, depending on who's judging. You decide to add nothing and hope blandness is a virtue this week. The porridge simmers, and you can already sense the day's judgments forming. Maybe the pot is a little scorched from yesterday's stew. Maybe it's chipped from last week's argument with the firewood. Maybe someone will notice, and in noticing, remember, and in remembering, whisper. Someone knocks on the door as you're portioning out breakfast. You jump. Knocking is rarely good news at this hour. You open the door to a neighbour, smiling the tense smile of someone hoping to catch you doing something odd. She asks for a little milk, peering past you into the kitchen. You hand her the jug, careful to act casual. Too generous is suspicious. Too stingy is worse. You strike a perfect balance, or so you hope. She lingers, eyeing the pot on the fire. Smells different, she says. You freeze for half a second, then smile, trying a little less salt today. She nods, non-committal, storing this fact in the overflowing cabinet of things you might be doing wrong. Breakfast is served to your family on rough wooden bowls, steam curling upward in the grey morning light. The children eat without comment. They've learned that comments are dangerous too. Your partner looks at you grateful, but you sense the silent question. Will today be ordinary, or will someone accuse you of putting something extra in the meal? You watch them eat, your own appetite lost to anxiety. In a world this tightly wound, the simple act of feeding your family is fraught with risk. You wonder if your neighbour will mention this visit at church, if someone will ask if your porridge tasted different, if you'll become tomorrow's topic, all because your breakfast wasn't bland enough to be invisible. After breakfast, you clean the pot extra well, so there's no residue, no lingering smell, no evidence of strange ingredients. You wipe the table, sweep the floor, and rehearse explanations you hope you'll never need. And so, the first meal is finished, your first small trial survived. But you know, with a sinking feeling, that there will be more. In colonial America, every breakfast is a gamble, and every ordinary moment is a chance for suspicion to rise. You get dressed carefully. Too plain and you're strange. Too neat and you're prideful. Too colourful and you're obviously in league with darker forces. You choose the safest option. Beige despair. In colonial America, clothing is not about comfort or personal expression. It's a daily negotiation with paranoia. Your dress hangs limp and uninspired on a hook near the bed, the colour of unbuttered bread. The fabric stiff from repeated washings in icy water and scrubbing with homemade soap that smells faintly of lye and resignation. You take it off the hook with the solemnity of a priest handling a sacred relic. Today's miracle will be surviving another day without attracting comment. Layer by layer you construct your armour, an underdress, a plain petticoat, and finally the shapeless neutral dress itself. The material is rough, itching against your skin, and the sleeves are long enough to hide your wrists, which is important. Bare wrists mean you don't care about decency. Sleeves too long mean you're hiding something, perhaps claws. You tie your apron at the waist. You've chosen the one without any stains, because stains can be interpreted as evidence of strange substances. But an apron that's too clean hints at idleness, so before you leave your room, you discreetly dab at it with a damp corner of the firewood. Now it looks convincingly busy, like you've been tending to chores since dawn. Congratulations! You're now dressed in the only style guaranteed to attract exactly the wrong kind of attention. Bonnet or no bonnet. It's a question that has kept entire generations of women up at night. No bonnet, and your hair is exposed, immodest, vain, inviting trouble. But a bonnet tied too tightly, that can look secretive. The solution? Tie the ribbons in a bow so small and unassuming that it barely qualifies as an accessory. You check yourself in a dull, warped bit of tin. Your reflection looks haunted, but at least not flamboyant. Shoes are next. You slip your feet into cracked leather, so worn and nondescript they could belong to anyone. New shoes are suspicious. How did you afford them? Shoes too old mean you're not caring for what little God has provided. It's a delicate dance between poverty and pride. You look around at your remaining options. A shawl, drab of course. Maybe a faded scarf if the weather is bad. Never, ever a scarf with pattern or colour. You remember last winter, when Goody Perkins wore a shawl with a red thread stitched into the hem. The church meeting afterward could have been mistaken for a trial. She still denies any involvement with pagan threadwork, but the side eyes persist. Dressing is more exhausting than any chore you'll do all day. Your mind races through the list. Is the hem too high? Too low? Are there any odd patches that could be mistaken for symbols? You smooth every wrinkle, tug every seam, and mentally rehearse how you would explain any detail if questioned. It was my mother's. I found it in the market. No, I don't know what that stain is. Yes, I washed it. No, it didn't come out. Finally you stand in the faint morning light, a human embodiment of wallpaper. You're now as neutral as possible. Or so you hope. Even beige has become suspicious lately, since it hides dust so well, perhaps too well as the gossips like to say. You take one last look around the room, check for any stray ribbons, forbidden buttons, or controversial shades of brown, and prepare to meet the day. Because in a place where what you wear can become an accusation, getting dressed is never simple. It's survival in slow motion, stitched together by anxiety, and worn with the silent hope that tomorrow, beige will still be considered safe. You step outside and feel it immediately. Eyes, lingering a moment too long. Someone nods at you, but not warmly. It's the kind of nod that says, "I am storing this interaction for later." The air outside is sharp and the sky a featureless grey. But the real weather here is the steady drizzle of suspicion. The street is muddy, packed by boots, hooves and wagon wheels, with puddles reflecting the crooked silhouettes of houses. The village is small enough that everyone knows everyone, and large enough that no one truly knows anyone at all. You take a few careful steps forward, adjusting your shawl, and try not to look like you're adjusting anything at all. A window creaks open behind you, just a crack, as if the house itself is curious. You pretend not to notice. The neighbour's door swings on its hinge, someone sweeping the step, broom pausing just long enough for you to walk past. The broom resumes once you've moved on, a subtle signal. I have seen you. I have noted the hour. I am fully up to date on your current whereabouts. Children play in the street, but even their laughter sounds calculated. Their games stop and start in odd syncopated rhythms as you walk by, as if someone pressed pause, then play. You hear a whispered word you can't quite make out. Maybe it's your name, maybe it's not. Either way, your shoulders tense instinctively. You nod at the next person you pass, a fisherman mending nets on his stoop. His glance slides over you, unblinking, expression unreadable. You wonder if he remembers the time you bought fish from someone else last week, or if he's thinking about the rumours from church, or if he's just irritated about the price of salt. There is no way to know. In colonial America, every silence is loaded. The morning routine is a choreography of polite avoidance and forced interactions. Someone waves. You wave back, but not with too much enthusiasm. Too cheerful is suspicious. Too distant is suspicious. You aim for pleasantly exhausted. That usually satisfies everyone. It's a marvel, really, how nothing you do goes unnoticed. The way you walk, the way you hold your basket, the way you glance at the sky before crossing the road. Every motion is a performance. A cough could be a signal, a pause, a plot. You become hyper-aware of your body. Are your hands too still, too busy? Is your head held too high or too low? Is your step too fast, suggesting you're up to something, or too slow, as if you're hoping to be caught? There's a group of women gathered by the well, their conversation soft but insistent. You can't hear their words, but you feel them ripple outwards. When you approach, they part just enough to let you in, but not enough to make you feel welcome. You draw water with steady hands, careful not to spill. Spilling water is bad luck, and bad luck has a habit of spreading. You retreat with your bucket, nodding thanks, watching as the group closes ranks behind you. They pick up their conversation again, a little louder now, so you catch the word unusual. It could mean anything. It usually does. As you make your way back, the feeling never leaves. Someone is always watching, always interpreting. You could swear you hear your name, or something close to it, carried on the wind. You keep your head down, try to look as unremarkable as possible, and walk the tightrope between visible and invisible. In this place, being seen is risky. Not being seen is even riskier. So you settle for being noticed, just enough to pass, never enough to be remembered fondly. And as the door closes softly behind you, you let out the breath you didn't know you were holding, knowing you'll have to hold it all again tomorrow. Church isn't just worship, it's surveillance. You sing loudly enough to be heard, but not loudly enough to draw attention. You bow your head at exactly the right angle. You're spiritually exhausted before noon. Sunday, or, depending on the mood of the village, sometimes every day, is not just a break from toil, it's a public exam. The church stands at the centre of town, a squat wooden building with windows too small to let in much light, but large enough for everyone inside to see you. As you walk up the steps, you feel the weight of eyes, the pressure of unspoken questions, the silent measuring of your soul, and your shoes, and your hairstyle, and your expression, which should always suggest repentance but never despair. The pews are cold and hard, and you're careful to sit neither too close to the front, which looks showy, nor too far back, which looks evasive. The only safe spot is somewhere anonymous, wedged between two families whose collective faith is unimpeachable. You smooth your dress, fold your hands, and remind yourself not to fidget. Fidgeting means guilt. The sermon drones on, the minister's voice rising and falling like the tide. You listen for the parts where he warns about temptation, about evil, about the dangers of pride and idleness, words that always seem to circle back to women who speak too much, laugh too loudly, or, God forbid, don't laugh at all. You nod when everyone else nods. You mutter the right amens at the right time. You steal glances at your neighbours to make sure you're in rhythm, a little chorus of conformity. Then comes the singing. You open the battered hymnal, the pages thin and spotted, and aim for the delicate balance of pious enthusiasm. Too strong and you're performing, too soft and you're slacking. Your voice blends with the others, hopefully. You hope no one notices that you can't quite hit the high notes. The last woman who stood out during a hymn was accused of vanity. You have no intention of following her lead. The prayers are long and winding, designed to cover every possible sin. Eyes are closed, but you know at least half the congregation is peeking. You peek too, just in case you miss something important, like who's not peeking, which is suspicious in itself. You bow your head, hands clasped so tightly your knuckles ache, praying only that the hour will pass with you unnoticed. When the collection plate comes around, you place your coin gently, not too generously, that's ostentation, and not too sparingly, that's stinginess. Every gesture, every movement is interpreted. You scratch your nose and instantly regret it. Did you just signal boredom, or perhaps irritation? You shift in your seat and someone 2 rows over turns their head. You freeze, then smile faintly, as if you're overcome by holy awe. After the service, you stand on the steps outside while people mingle, exchanging news, compliments, and veiled criticisms. It's not enough to be present. You must be visible. You shake hands with the right people, nod at the minister, and make polite conversation about the weather. Nothing too interesting, nothing too negative. Complaining about the weather is fine. Complaining about anything else means you have opinions, and opinions, especially in women, are dangerous. You walk home slowly, careful not to walk alone with anyone who isn't a blood relative. Walking alone is suspicious. Walking in pairs is gossiped about. Groups are safest, but only if you blend in so well you're almost invisible. By midday you are drained, not by faith, but by the vigilance it demands. You have performed your part, recited, sung, nodded, and prayed in all the right ways. Church is less a sanctuary than a spotlight, and each service is a test you're never sure you've passed. And so, you return home, wondering not what God thought of your piety, but what the village will remember about your posture, your voice, and the way you folded your hands. In colonial America, church is not where suspicion ends, it's where it begins. You're different in some small, harmless way. Maybe you're outspoken, maybe you're quiet, maybe you didn't marry, maybe you married and then didn't behave correctly afterward. Any of these are enough. It doesn't take much, really. In colonial America, normal is a very narrow, twisting path, bordered on each side by suspicion. The people who walk it successfully are almost invisible. blending in so seamlessly that no one ever remembers what they said or did. You, on the other hand, are memorable in exactly the wrong ways. Maybe you have a laugh that carries, or you walk too fast, or your step is too heavy, or your step is too light. Perhaps you're left-handed, or you ask too many questions, or you once read a book that didn't come directly from the minister's shelf. You might simply keep to yourself, spending quiet afternoons with needlework or writing, which is obviously a sign that you're hiding something. Or maybe you do the opposite, throw yourself into every gathering, every conversation, which is also suspect. People who are too social must be manipulating. People who are too shy are plotting. It's a world where the boundaries of acceptable are as invisible and shifting as mist. You didn't choose to stand out, but somehow you did. Maybe you never married, which means people want to know why. Or you married, but your spouse died, which is tragic, but also, if we're being honest, a little bit suspicious. You laugh at the wrong jokes or don't laugh at all. You're too fond of animals or not fond enough. Your bread doesn't rise or your bread rises too well. Every tiny difference becomes a possible omen. Sometimes you try to fit in. You echo the phrases you hear at church. You join the others at the well. You compliment someone's stitching. But the effort always shows, and in a place where everyone is watching for mistakes, effort is just another kind of flaw. People sense when you're pretending, and they don't like it. Sincerity is prized, but only if it looks exactly like everyone else's. Children notice too. They mimic what their parents say, but with the brutal honesty only the young possess. They point, they whisper, they dare each other to ask you questions about why you're alone, or why your hair is darker, or why your hands shake. Adults who should know better collect these observations and add them to their own lists. If you're outspoken, you learn to bite your tongue. If you're shy, you learn to force small talk, hoping the right words might build you a protective shield. If you're clever, you learn to hide it. If you're curious, you pretend not to be. It's a kind of daily editing, a relentless whittling down of your real self until only something bland and manageable is left. But even then, the memory of your difference lingers. People remember that one time you said something sharp or didn't say something at all. The unspoken rule is simple. Be exactly like everyone else, but not so much that it seems suspicious. If you ever forget this, someone will remind you, gently at first. With a look, a cough, a polite suggestion that you join the sewing circle more often or smile more in public. If you continue to be different, the reminders become sharper. Just trying to help, they'll say, but their eyes are wary. They know that difference is dangerous, contagious, possibly even damning, so you move through the day carefully, hiding your eccentricities under layers of beige clothing and polite conversation. But difference has a way of leaking out, an odd turn of phrase, a habit, a memory that slips through before you can catch it. And every time it happens, you feel the chill of eyes lingering just a moment too long. Being different in colonial America isn't a quirk, it's a liability, and it's a sin you never meant to commit. Your neighbours know everything about you, or at least they think they do. They know how often you leave your house, who visits, and whether you smiled yesterday. They are very concerned. You never signed up for this kind of attention. But in a colonial village, privacy is a luxury no one can afford, and curiosity is the only real entertainment on offer. The houses here aren't just built close together, they're practically leaning in, listening. Every window is an eye, every door a mouth waiting to share what it's heard. You notice it most in the small moments. The neighbour who just happens to be sweeping her stoop every time you fetch water, or the man who nods at you from his porch and then spends the next hour puzzling over what your nod might have meant. They keep a mental ledger, your neighbours. It's detailed, even if not always accurate. They know what time you left for church last week and whether you wore your shawl with the fringe or the one without. They know how much bread you baked, whether you burned it, and who you gave the heel to. And they share this knowledge, enthusiastically, and sometimes with embellishments. She went out twice on Tuesday because she's up to something. I saw her carrying something wrapped in cloth. Gossip isn't just idle talk here, it's an act of communal vigilance. If someone visits you, even briefly, it becomes the day's headline. Who was that? What did they want? Did you offer them tea? Was there laughter? If you leave the house at an odd hour, someone will wonder aloud what you are doing. If you stay home all day, they wonder if you're ill or worse, hiding. Either way, you'll be discussed. People will offer opinions. She keeps to herself is suspicious, but so is she talks too much. There's no Goldilocks zone here, just a spectrum of concern. You become keenly aware of your habits. How long do you talk at the market? Do you linger at the well? Are you too friendly or not friendly enough? Your neighbours notice patterns, and when patterns shift, when you sleep in or leave early or borrow something you've never borrowed before, they ask questions, not always to your face, but always to someone's. You feel it in the way conversation quiets when you approach, in the half-second pause before someone answers your greeting, in the glances exchanged behind your back. Sometimes they're helpful. They might bring over soup if you're sick or help mend your fence. But even kindness comes with a price tag. Gratitude can turn to gossip if you don't return a favour or if you thank them the wrong way. They remember. They always remember. The line between care and surveillance is very thin here, and it's easy to trip over it. There's a sense of safety in numbers, but also a sense of exposure. If you change your routine, if your mood is off, if you look tired or anxious, it won't go unnoticed. Even your silences are heard. You learn to move carefully, to moderate your laughter and temper your sighs. You play the part expected of you, but sometimes you wonder what would happen if you just stopped trying. Would they worry more or less? At the end of the day, as you close your door against the chill and the constant gaze, you hear them talking still, voices low, sentences half finished, the sound carrying over the small yards and muddy paths. You are the subject of a never-ending story, written and revised with every passing day. In colonial America, everyone is an author, and you are always, always the main character. Someone gets sick, a child, a cow, a man who was already coughing last winter. The explanation is never germs, it's never bad luck, it's you, or someone like you. It starts with a cough in the night, muffled behind thin wooden walls. A fever breaks out in the little house near the stream, and by breakfast the whole village has heard. Before the patient has even finished their morning broth, the questions begin. How did this happen? Who touched the water? Who brought in fresh eggs? Who was seen near the house just before the symptoms began? The answer, inevitably, is never nobody's fault. In colonial America, there is no such thing as a blameless cold, no such thing as a harmless ache. The concept of invisible germs is centuries away. Bad air is a theory, but bad neighbours are much more satisfying. So people look at each other, at you, and begin to draw connections. The web tightens fast. You remember, with a jolt of panic, that you stopped to chat with the sick child's mother 2 days ago at the well. She asked if your garden was still producing. You said yes. She looked at you, strangely, you think now, and nodded. Was that enough? Or was it the way you helped her tie her shawl? Or maybe you just looked too healthy while her family looked pale. As the day goes on, more people get involved. The cow that won't get up, the baby who won't sleep, the elderly neighbour whose aches have grown suddenly worse. With every new illness, the net tightens. People glance your way, not openly, but enough that you feel it on your skin. At the market, conversation shifts when you approach. People speak more quietly, and nobody meets your eyes for long. You feel as if you're leaking something dangerous, something that seeps into the food, the water, the very air. You hear whispers about the last time, the time Goody Mason lost 2 goats and blamed it on a shadow she saw pass her window. about how old Tom's bad leg flared up after he quarrelled with his neighbour about a fence. Stories layer upon stories until the difference between what happened and what might have happened disappears completely. Even the smallest habits become evidence. Did you use sage from your own garden to make a tea for the sick? Generous, but now suspicious. Did you avoid the house entirely? That's cold, almost calculated. Did you pray for the sick child? What words did you use? Who heard you say them? Was there something odd in your tone? If the fever breaks, that's medicine. If it worsens, that's malice. The sick are tended with the usual home remedies, but every failure becomes another stone in your pile of accusations. You remember to wash your hands after helping, but no one knows that's important, so instead of gratitude, you get wary glances. You bring soup, but it's not the right soup, or it's too hot, or it's too cold, or God help you, it smells like something unfamiliar. Soon, the village divides itself into the sick and the suspicious. If the illness spreads, the question isn't what caused it, but who. People begin looking for someone to blame, not to cure. You start to feel a strange mixture of fear and guilt, even if you've done nothing at all. By the end of the week, the minister's mentioning the sickness in his sermons. He urges everyone to examine their hearts and their neighbours. The message is clear. Calamity comes from sin, and sin always finds a face. So you keep your distance, but not too much. You offer help, but not too eagerly. You pray quietly, watching every word. Because in a village like this, every cough, every limp, every ill wind can become your fault. And once the question is asked, who brought this upon us? The answer is never, ever no one. You know how to make a tea that helps with pain. This was a mistake. Knowledge is not appreciated here, especially when it comes from a woman who did not receive it from a man. The shelf above your hearth holds small bundles of dried leaves and flowers, carefully labelled in your own handwriting. You know which ones to steep for fever, which to crush for headaches, which to sprinkle over a wound when there's nothing left to do but hope. Your mother taught you. Her mother taught her. There's nothing mysterious about it, unless someone decides it ought to be. The herbs hang from the ceiling, their earthy scent mixing with the ever-present smoke of your small fire. On days when a neighbour's child comes limping to your door, you reach for yarrow. When a friend's husband spends 3 nights coughing, you offer a pouch of horehound and directions for brewing. The thanks are whispered, careful, almost guilty. People want your help. They just don't want to admit it out loud. Your knowledge is practical, built from years of watching and tending. But in a place where mystery and suspicion thrive, every practical thing has a shadow. You remember a time, years ago, when someone in the next village over was found with dried foxglove and accused of brewing up something unnatural. The lesson stuck. Never be too clever, never be too effective, never let anyone think your cures work better than prayer. Even the way you prepare your herbs invites curiosity. You use a knife with a bone handle, worn smooth from decades of use. Someone once saw you sharpen it and made a joke about witches' tools. You laughed, too loudly, and made a mental note to only sharpen it behind closed shutters. It's exhausting, always thinking one step ahead of suspicion. Sometimes you find yourself second-guessing your remedies. If you make a tea that works too quickly, that's unnatural. If the pain lingers, people mutter about incompetence. If you suggest anything unusual, nettles for swelling, chamomile for sleep, it's seen as exotic, and exotic is never good. Familiarity is your only protection, but even that can turn on you if someone needs a scapegoat. And of course, there's always the question, who taught you? A woman who learned from her mother is suspicious. A man who learned from a book is a physician. You have no diploma, no formal blessing, only the quiet, accumulated wisdom of generations of women who got up every morning and tried to keep their families alive. When illness sweeps through the village, your skills become a lifeline and a liability. People come to you quietly, at dusk, avoiding eye contact with anyone else on the road. You hand them a poultice, some dried willow bark, and hope that if it helps, they'll say nothing. If it doesn't, you brace for the sideways glances, the questions, the sudden withdrawal of invitations to supper. Sometimes you lie awake at night, cataloguing every plant you've given away, every dose you've mixed, every whispered recommendation you've made. You worry that you've made yourself too useful or not useful enough. There is no safe amount of knowledge here, just enough to help, never enough to stand out. On especially hard days, you consider throwing the herbs into the fire, letting the smoke carry away every trace of what you know, but you don't. Because people still need your help, and you still need to believe that practical wisdom is not a crime. But in this village, in this era, every handful of mint, every bundle of sage, every pinch of something dried and secretive is a risk, and you carry that risk quietly, every time someone knocks on your door after dark, hoping for a cure but never ever wanting anyone else to know where they got it. You help other women give birth. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. Either way, your involvement has now been logged mentally by everyone in the room. In a place where childbirth is as dangerous as any disease, the midwife is both miracle worker and mortal risk. Your knowledge is practical, how to cut the cord, how to stop the bleeding, what to do if a baby comes too soon or refuses to come at all. You learned by watching and doing, by listening to the old women, by paying attention when others looked away. None of it is magic, but in colonial America, not magic is a very thin defense. You enter the homes of women in pain, your hands trembling just a little every time. The walls are thin, the beds are hard, and the air is thick with hope and fear. Sometimes there are too many people in the room, and sometimes not enough. The mother's face is tight with agony, her husband pacing the floor, in the way and out of his depth. You say the words you're supposed to say, reassuring, practiced, borrowed from those who came before, and you do your best, even though you know your best is not always enough. Sometimes the birth is quick and safe. The child cries, the mother weeps, and the family breathes a prayer of gratitude. You are thanked, but quietly, as if even relief could be dangerous. Other times things go wrong, too slow, too fast, too much blood, not enough breath. You do what you can, and when it isn't enough, the silence that follows is deep and suspicious. You know that everyone in the room is storing this in their memory, tucking it away for future conversations. There are days when your skills feel like a blessing. The village relies on you, though no one will say it out loud. They come to you for advice, for remedies, for reassurance that everything will be all right. But you sense the undercurrent. If things go badly, if the child doesn't cry, if the mother fades, someone will wonder what you did differently this time. You remember stories told in hushed voices about a midwife in another town who was accused when too many babies were lost, about the healer who was blamed when a mother died in fever. The rumours grow in the retelling. Did she use a charm? Did she say a prayer in another language? Did she touch the wrong herbs, or linger too long by the fire? The truth doesn't matter. The story is enough. After every birth, you return home heavy with other people's secrets and your own fear. You clean your hands with cold water, trying to scrub away the feeling that you're being watched. You wash the cloths, stoke the fire, and try to forget the faces, happy or heartbroken, that look to you for answers, but the village never forgets. Every successful birth is a mark in your favour, but every loss, every complication, is a tally on a much longer, invisible ledger. It doesn't help that men rarely understand what happens behind closed doors. To them, childbirth is a mystery, and mysteries are never comfortable. Still, you go when called. You whisper encouragement, tie knots, check pulses, and comfort the grieving. You hope every time that this will be the one that goes perfectly. No pain, no tears, no lingering suspicions. But you know the truth. In colonial America, to help is to risk. Midwives are needed but never trusted for long. And so, you remain both healer and suspect, walking the line between necessity and accusation. In a world that wants easy answers, you are both saviour and scapegoat, respected until the moment you're not. You don't own much. That makes you desperate. Desperate people are dangerous. Dangerous people are probably witches. This logic makes perfect sense to everyone but you. In colonial America, poverty isn't just a struggle. It's a red flag, a warning sign, a whispered question at the market. You wake up each morning with less than you need and far less than you want. Your shoes are thin and patched, your clothes faded, your food measured out in careful spoonfuls. Nothing is wasted, not because you are thrifty, but because you can't afford to be anything else. Neighbours notice. They notice everything. They see when you borrow flour from the miller, or when you walk home from church alone because no one offered you a ride on their wagon. They see that your garden isn't as green, that your roof sags more with every storm, that your woodpile is shrinking faster than it should. Every sign of need is another reason for suspicion. People talk, as they always do. She's desperate, they say. Desperate for food, desperate for warmth. Desperate people will do anything. The line between pity and suspicion is razor thin. One day, a neighbour might slip you a loaf of bread, but by the next the story has grown teeth. Did you hear? She took charity again. She's never satisfied. She'll take whatever she can get. The old stories come out about witches who could spoil your milk with a glance, or who stole butter from the churn with a whispered word. It doesn't help that, when something goes missing, a chicken, a silver spoon, a few apples from the orchard, people look your way. Not because they think you're a thief, but because you are poor. And poverty, in this world, looks an awful lot like temptation. You try to keep your head down, work harder, smile more, but even your gratitude can be misread. Too thankful. You must be guilty of something. Your home is small, crowded with too many memories and not enough furniture. Every object you own is essential, and everyone is worn. When the constable's wife drops by just to check in, her eyes scan the room, cataloguing what you lack. You offer her the last of your tea, watching as she studies your cup, cracked but clean, before taking a hesitant sip. She asks polite questions with impolite curiosity. How are you getting by these days? Do you ever miss your old life? Have you seen anything unusual lately? You know what she's really asking. Have you gotten desperate enough to cross the line? Are you hungry enough to make a deal with the devil? In a town where prosperity is seen as a sign of God's favour, your struggle isn't just hard, it's suspicious. Every night you worry about what will happen if you ask for help one too many times, or not enough times, or from the wrong person. If you accept charity, it means you're weak. If you refuse it, it means you're proud. Either way, someone will talk. If your children are hungry, it must be because you haven't prayed hard enough. If you fall ill, it's probably punishment for something you haven't confessed. You dream sometimes of abundance, full cupboards and warm beds, of days when no one looks at you sideways for being in need. But then you wake, and the world is the same, cautious, judgmental, and convinced that desperation is just a step away from danger. In colonial America, being poor is never just about lacking money. It's about lacking trust, lacking safety, lacking the benefit of the doubt. It's about living every day as a potential suspect, knowing that the fewer things you have, the more things people are willing to blame you for. And so you move through your days carefully, trying not to draw attention to your empty pockets, hoping that, just this once, need will not be mistaken for witchcraft. You own a little more than others. That makes you suspicious. Where did it come from? Hard work is never the answer people like. In colonial America, wealth is a paradox. Everyone wants it, but no one quite trusts it. Your house is a little sturdier, your pantry a little fuller, your Sunday clothes a little less patched than your neighbours. Instead of comfort, these small advantages bring a different kind of trouble, one that settles in as surely as dust on the windowsill. You notice the looks. Neighbours peer at your property lines, trying to remember if your fence was always that straight, if your barn was always so well stocked. People comment, quietly but pointedly, on how your chickens seem a little plumper, your garden a little greener. You become the subject of endless calculations. She's got new curtains this year, someone will say. Where did she get the fabric? The store hasn't had any in weeks. If you host a supper and serve more than the usual boiled potatoes, tongues will wag. What did she do to deserve it? There's an invisible equation here, and you're always on the wrong side of it. Hard work isn't a satisfying explanation after all. Everyone works hard. Luck is suspect. Inheritance is possible, but it brings its own gossip. No one says it out loud at first, but the old stories bubble up in private. You know, people who prosper too quickly sometimes have help. Help, in this context, never means good advice or a bit of luck. It means something darker. Any good fortune must be explained. Maybe your cow gives more milk because you know something you're not telling. Maybe your fields yield more grain because you charm them with the right words. If you help your neighbour with their harvest and your own goes well that year, it's suspicious. If your husband is healthy while others fall ill, you must have made a deal. People remember these details. They keep a tally. You try to share discreetly so as not to seem boastful. A basket of apples for a neighbour, a loaf of bread for a sick friend. But too much generosity becomes another mark against you. She's trying to buy us off, they'll whisper. She's got something to hide. You hear the rumours float back to you. No one has that much by accident, not unless they've made a bargain. On market days, you notice the difference most sharply. You bring your goods to sell, hoping to blend in, but your produce is fresher, your butter creamier, your eggs larger. Other sellers eye you as if you've broken an unspoken rule. Customers look over their shoulders before approaching your stall, making sure no one's watching too closely. Even your family feels it. Your children are watched for signs of pride. Your spouse is expected to be modest. If your daughter wears a ribbon in her hair, it's flaunting. If your son is taller than the neighbour's boy, it must be something in your cooking. Every detail is loaded. Every comfort is suspect. At home, you sometimes find yourself hiding your own good fortune, saving the best food for when company isn't around, tucking away your new apron, letting your house fall into a little more disrepair than necessary. Anything to seem a bit less fortunate, a bit less different. But poverty is dangerous, and so is plenty. There's no safe place in the middle. As night falls, you wonder how it got this way. Why comfort is something to be apologised for. Why hard work never seems to be proof enough. In a world where struggle is the norm, thriving feels almost like a confession. You listen to the sounds of the village winding down, doors closing, voices quieting, and wonder whose turn it is tomorrow to answer for what they have. Because here, wealth is never just about having more. It's about being seen to have more. And being seen, as you know all too well, is always the first step toward being suspected. You're angry today. You have reasons. Unfortunately, anger in a woman is considered a personality flaw, a spiritual issue, and possibly a supernatural warning sign. You wake up with a knot in your chest, a dull ache that has nothing to do with illness and everything to do with frustration. Maybe someone shorted you at the market again. Maybe a neighbour let their goats wander through your garden and act surprised again. Or maybe it's just the slow, relentless build-up of never being able to say what you mean when you mean it without paying a price. You try to swallow it down, but anger isn't something that dissolves. It simmers. It sharpens your words, tightens your jaw, makes you move a little faster, Slam a pot down a little harder. Close a door a little louder. In any other world, this might pass unnoticed. Here, everything is noticed. You hear the gossip before you even leave the house. She's been out of sorts lately. I heard she raised her voice. Did you see the way she looked at Goody Clark? It doesn't matter that Goody Clark has been needling you for weeks. The moment you show your irritation, the story isn't about her, it's about you. You are the problem, or maybe the warning. In church, you bow your head and pray for patience, but someone catches the edge of your frown. Someone hears you sigh a little too forcefully. After the service, they gather in little knots and speculate about what's eating at you. They call it trouble at home or bad blood or womanly difficulties, but everyone knows that's just a polite way to circle the word they're really thinking. Dangerous. At home, your family treads lightly. Children learn early that a mother's anger can be a cause for concern, not just because of what she might do, but because of what others might say she's done. Your spouse asks gently, "Are you all right?" But there's an edge to it, a warning. Don't make a scene. Don't make it worse. The worst part is the double standard. A man can shout, stomp, throw things. He's forceful, decisive, passionate. You do the same, and you are unpredictable, unstable, perhaps touched by something unnatural. You see it in the eyes of the neighbours who watch you haul water with a little too much force. You hear it in the nervous laughter after you say something pointed at the well. Sometimes you try to bite it back, to soften your voice, to plaster a smile over your true feelings. But the effort leaves you exhausted, and ironically, people still notice. She's being too quiet, they say. She's hiding something. There's no winning. The spectrum of acceptable female emotion is about the width of a single thread. If you do let your anger slip, if you finally say what you mean, maybe about the unfairness of the chores, or the way the men talk over you, or how you're tired of pretending everything is fine, it doesn't go away. It lingers. It gets repeated, exaggerated, twisted. Did you hear what she said? I saw her eyes flash. Her hands shook. By sunset, you are the latest character in a cautionary tale. The woman who snapped, the one you should keep your children away from just in case. At night you lie awake and count all the things you didn't say, all the things you wanted to say but couldn't. You remember how your grandmother told you to keep your head down, to let things pass. But even she had her moments. You wonder how many women through history have been accused of witchcraft for nothing more than refusing to smile. In colonial America, anger is a dangerous luxury for a woman. Best not to let anyone see it. Best to turn it inward, fold it into your napkin, mix it quietly into the bread. Because once you're labelled as difficult, it's only a short walk to dangerous. And in this village, dangerous women are rarely left alone for long. Children begin saying strange things. They always do. And adults, instead of questioning this, lean in closer and start asking leading questions with terrifying enthusiasm. You hear it first as a whisper at the well, drifting past as you haul up your bucket. A group of children giggling, eyes wide, voices just loud enough to be heard. She floats. She talks to cats. Her shadow moved on its own. In a place with no books for amusement and no screens to distract, imagination runs wild. Normally, the adults would laugh, shake their heads, and tell the children to finish their chores. But in a village tense with suspicion, every childish flight of fancy lands with a thud of possibility. At first, it's almost funny. You remember what it was like to be a child, how the world seemed filled with magic, how you made stories out of shadows and convinced yourself you could talk to birds. You want to smile at the children's games, but you notice the adults around you are not smiling. They are listening, intent, collecting every detail. What started as a game becomes testimony. It always starts small. A little girl, scolded for sneaking honey, insists a shadow made her do it. A boy claims he saw someone fly past his window at midnight. A toddler babbles about a woman in the woods who whispered secrets in the dark. None of it would matter, except the adults are so hungry for answers, for any sign, for someone to blame. The adults don't dismiss the stories. Instead, they ask questions. Who was it? What did she say? What did you see? And children, eager for attention and approval, offer more. They embellish. They remember dreams as reality, rumours as memory. Every story grows. Did you really see her fly? Well, I think so. Yes, I did. The answers get bolder, scarier, more impossible. And with every retelling, the line between play and accusation blurs. Suddenly, the children are centre stage. Adults gather them up, set them on stools in the meeting house, coax them to repeat their tales. Some children realise what's happening and try to take it back. I was just pretending, but by now the adults are invested. Tell us again, they say, and their voices are eager, insistent, desperate to confirm what they already suspect. Soon, every child's word becomes evidence. The adults compare notes. My Sarah said she saw her near the cowshed after dark. Jacob heard her singing backwards in the field. They say she makes the fire smoke and the bread spoil. The web tightens and all you can do is watch, helpless, as games become confessions and confessions become accusations. Some children enjoy the attention for a while. They get treats, hugs, the feeling of being important in a world that rarely notices them. Others grow frightened as they realise their stories have consequences. They fidget under the questioning, glance nervously at their parents, try to change the subject, but by now it's too late. As for you, there is nothing you can say in your own defence. To question a child's honesty is to cast suspicion on yourself. To ignore their stories is to look callous, guilty, inhuman. The adults congratulate themselves on their vigilance, pat the children on the head, and go home to write down every detail, adding flourishes with each retelling. By sunset, the village has new fuel for its fire. The children's words echo long after the games have ended, repeated in doorways and by candlelight, stitched into sermons and market day gossip. The stories have become truth, simply by being repeated enough times. You close your shutters and lock your door, but there is no locking out the stories children tell or the damage they cause when adults decide to believe every word. No one screams witch at first. They whisper, quietly, carefully, just enough for everyone to hear it eventually. It starts with a conversation just out of earshot. Two women talking by the well, voices low but faces animated. I'm not saying anything for certain, one says. The other nods, eyes wide, encouraging her to go on without ever saying the word herself. By lunchtime, the story has grown, stretching like dough, passed from kitchen to market to pew. Did you hear? She's not quite right, that one. They say she knows things she shouldn't. Her garden grows too well in the shade. Nothing specific, nothing you could answer or explain. Just enough to stick. People become careful around you, but not in a kind way. You catch the way conversations falter when you walk by. Someone glances at your hands and remembers seeing you gather herbs, but now they recall it happening at a strange hour, in unusual weather, maybe while you were humming. The humming part is new, but it makes the story more memorable. Even your family feels it. A neighbour stops your child in the lane to ask about your daily routines, how late you sleep, what you cook, if you pray before bed. Children don't notice the difference between polite curiosity and something darker. They answer honestly, not knowing their words will be repeated, twisted, added to a mounting list of oddities. Mother talks to the cat, your youngest says, laughing. Mother talks to all sorts of things. The neighbour nods gravely, storing that away. You try to ignore it at first. You go about your business, fetching water, tending the fire, helping at the meeting house, hoping the whispers will blow away like smoke. But rumours are stickier than smoke. They cling to you, following everywhere you go. A merchant at the market counts your change twice, frowning as if you might have slipped something into his coins. A woman you've known for years stops inviting you to share her bench at church. No one says the word. That's the most maddening part. If someone accused you outright, you could at least defend yourself, state your case, demand proof. But the whispers move just below the surface, impossible to grab hold of. You're left floundering, trying to answer accusations that no one has voiced aloud. Your friends become scarce. Not all at once, no one wants to look cruel, but they begin to find reasons not to call at your door. They're busy, they say, not feeling well, too much to do at home. You recognize the change in their faces, sympathy, tinged with calculation. They want to protect themselves. You don't blame them. It's what you'd do too if you weren't the one being whispered about. As days go by, the whispers get louder, but never quite reach the surface. At the market, a woman drops her basket and gasps when you stoop to help her. At church, the minister's eyes rest on you a little longer than they used to. When you pass children in the street, they stop playing and watch you go, silent and wide-eyed. At night, you hear your name in the wind, in the hush of voices slipping through cracks in the wall. It's not paranoia, not really. It's the knowledge that in this place suspicion is contagious. It spreads quietly, infecting everyone it touches. You tuck yourself into bed and listen to the house settle, wondering if tomorrow will bring another whisper, or if the next one will finally be said aloud. You wonder, as you drift towards sleep, if there's anything you can do to stop it. But you know the truth. In colonial America, accusations begin softly, like rain on the roof, gentle at first, easy to ignore. But eventually they become a flood, sweeping away anything in their path. And all you can do is hope you remember how to swim. You're brought in to explain yourself. This is not a fair process. This is a performance where the ending has already been chosen. It doesn't start with a gavel or an official summons. It starts with a knock at your door. Early, abrupt, the kind that makes you stand up too fast and catch your breath halfway to the threshold. Two men stand outside, one with a look of grave importance and the other with the look of a man who'd rather be anywhere else. "We'd like you to come with us," they say. They don't add. You have no choice, but you know it's true. You wrap your shawl around your shoulders and step out into the cold, feeling the eyes of the village pressing in as you walk down the lane. The meeting house is only a few steps away, but it might as well be miles. Inside, benches have been dragged into a semicircle. The constable is there, along with the magistrate and a handful of elders, people you've known your whole life who have seen you laugh, scold, comfort, work. Today, their faces are all angles and caution. You notice more faces at the windows, silhouettes in the doorway. Everyone wants to see, but no one wants to be seen watching. The questions start gently, as if this is an everyday chat. We're concerned about some things we've heard. People have noticed you out late at night. Several have remarked on your behaviour at the market. The questions are vague by design. They want you to fill in the gaps yourself, to stumble, to say something memorable. You answer, careful and measured, feeling the words as they leave your mouth and hang heavy in the stale air. Every reply you give becomes ammunition. If you're too direct, you're defensive. If you hedge, you're hiding something. If you insist you're innocent, they wonder why you're so desperate to deny it. The logic loops in on itself like a snake eating its own tail. You realise with a growing sense of dread that there's no right answer. There never was. They call witnesses, but these are not witnesses in the way you might hope. No one saw you do anything outright, but they all have stories, memories, impressions. Goody Harris recalls you humming to yourself while pulling weeds. John the Miller thinks he saw you with a strange bundle. Maybe it was just herbs. Maybe it was something more. Mary, your old friend, remembers that her bread didn't rise after you visited, and while she's quick to say she doesn't blame you, her eyes are wide and frightened as she speaks. Sometimes they ask questions about your family, your upbringing, your habits. Did your mother teach you how to make that tea? Did you ever read books that were not approved by the church? Do you pray the right prayers at the right times? Each question is an opportunity for your answers to be misunderstood, misquoted, twisted just enough to sound strange when retold. You try to stay calm, but you feel the world tilting beneath you. The room is small, but you feel miles away from everyone in it. You wonder if there's any point in defending yourself at all. The magistrate reads a passage from Scripture about the dangers of evil in the community. The words fall heavy and final. There is no lawyer. There is no defense. There is only you, alone against the sum total of every suspicion, every slight, every unexplained thing that's happened this year. They ask if you confess, if you feel remorse, if you'll repent. But repent for what? For being yourself in a world that has already decided what that means? By the end, your mouth is dry and your heart is pounding. You're told you may return home for now, but you know what everyone else in the room knows. You're not going home as the person you were before. You're going home as a question, a warning, a story for the others to whisper about. The verdict hasn't been read aloud, but you hear it in every quiet nod and sidelong glance. In colonial America, the courtroom isn't about truth. It's about closure. And closure always comes at someone's expense. You're subjected to tests that have no correct outcome. If you fail, you are guilty. If you survive, you're guilty. Logic left the building hours ago. It starts with whispers of evidence. Real evidence this time, they say. Something tangible to prove what everyone already believes. The magistrate talks solemnly of ancient methods, as if invoking age will make the process wise. You're led into the centre of the room, watched by a crowd eager for certainty and spectacle, with more eyes than sense. The first test is almost laughable, if it weren't so terrifying. They bring out a Bible. You're asked to recite a passage, any passage, without stumbling. If your voice shakes, if you forget a line, if your tongue tangles over words you've said 1,000 times, the room murmurs. A sure sign, they say, that evil is interfering. If you say every word perfectly, you must have memorized it for just this moment to trick them. Either way, suspicion grows. Then comes the search for the mark. An old woman is asked to inspect your skin, hands rough and eyes sharp. She looks for anything unusual, a mole, a scar, a birthmark, a scratch left by your own cat. If she finds something, it is proof. If she finds nothing, well, perhaps the devil is cleverer than most and has hidden his work more deeply. The crowd nods. There is no relief in passing, only a new fear. What test comes next? Sometimes they ask for cake, not the sweet kind, but a witch cake, baked with rye flour and disturbingly the urine of the afflicted. The cake is fed to a dog, who is then watched intently for any sign, a bark, a whimper, a shiver, that will be interpreted as a revelation of guilt. You stand there, helpless, as people decide your fate based on a hungry dog's indigestion. If you survive the cakes, and the scriptures and the inspections, there are still more ways to be tested. You may be asked to touch the afflicted, a child who claims to be under your spell, a neighbour who says you haunt her dreams. If your touch makes them better, it's proof of your power. If nothing happens, it's proof of your stubborn evil. The only thing everyone agrees on is that you are the centre of the story. Then, for the truly unfortunate, comes the ordeal by water. You are led to the edge of a cold pond. Your hands are tied, prayers are muttered, and you are lowered in. If you sink, you are innocent but probably dead. If you float, you are clearly in league with darkness, and your real punishment will begin. People stand by with ropes, sticks, and unblinking eyes. Some look away, but none object. You feel the absurdity of it all in your bones, how every part of you, your voice, your skin, your luck, your breath, has been repurposed as evidence. You remember how, as a child, you believed in fairness. Now you know that survival is simply another way to be condemned. The crowd doesn't want truth. They want closure, reassurance, a sense that their world makes sense again, even if they have to twist every sign and story to get there. When it's over, you're left shivering, exhausted, changed. Maybe they let you go home for now, to await their final word. Maybe you're kept under guard so you don't work mischief in the night. But the truth is, your fate was never up to you, or the tests, or the outcome. In colonial America, the only thing being tested is the village's appetite for fear. You lie awake, bruised and weary, knowing that there was never any way to pass, and knowing, with bitter certainty, that you will be tested again and again until someone finally feels satisfied, or until there's nothing left of you to test. You are encouraged to confess, strongly encouraged. People explain that confession will make everything easier. It will not. It starts quietly, with the soft, urgent voices of those who say they want to help you. You're led to a dim corner of the meeting house, or perhaps a bare, cold room behind the constable's house. Someone you once called a friend sits with you, their tone gentle, their words rehearsed. If you confess, they say, this can all be over. It's better for everyone, better for your soul. The pressure is polite at first, but it is unrelenting. They promise mercy, as if mercy is still on the table. They say you won't be harmed if you just tell the truth, but truth is a slippery thing now. The truth they want is not your truth. It's their own, a story that will satisfy the village, fill the air with relief, and give everyone someone to blame. You say you have nothing to confess, and they sigh, as if you are being difficult on purpose. Days pass. The questioning continues. Each conversation is a little more insistent, a little less friendly. You're offered a list of things you might have done, things people already believe. Did you curse the neighbour's cow? Did you cause the windstorm last week? Did you appear in someone's dreams? The more you deny, the more they lean in, certain your denial is part of the evidence. You're left alone for hours, then woken in the night for more questions. You're hungry, cold, and afraid. Sometimes you think you hear voices outside, your neighbours, the children you used to watch, the minister. Sometimes you hear crying, and you don't know if it's real or just the sound of your own fear echoing back at you. Eventually you are told that confession will save your life, that it will be easier on your family, easier on the village, easier on you. But you have seen what happens to others who have confessed. Their lives are not made easier, their families are not spared. Confession is not a path to safety, it's just another stone in the path to punishment. But now, refusing to confess is seen as proof that you are stubborn, willful, unrepentant, perhaps even proud. The stories of others come to haunt you. You remember Goody Blake, who held out for days, then confessed at last, just to make the shouting stop. Her confession grew as they pressed her for details, names of other witches, descriptions of meetings at midnight, stories of flying, of feasts, of signing the devil's book. She said what they wanted to hear, and then they punished her anyway. She is gone now, but her words live on, twisted, repeated, added to the ever-growing ledger of sins. Confession is not about truth. It is about relief, not for you, but for the people who want this nightmare to end. If you confess, they will nod gravely, thank you for your honesty, and move on to the next name. Your confession becomes their closure. You begin to wonder if resistance is worth it. The pressure grows until even you question yourself. Did you say something you shouldn't have? Did you think an unkind thought at the wrong moment? You worry your memory is failing, that you've forgotten a sin worth confessing. You almost wish you could invent something, just to make them stop. But deep down, you know it would not end with your words. You know that confession, real or imagined, is only the beginning of another darker story. So you sit in the flickering light, holding on to what little truth you have left, hoping someone, somewhere, still believes that innocence is possible, even when everyone else has decided that confession is just a matter of time. Fear is everywhere now. Fear of God, fear of neighbours, fear of standing out, fear of not standing out enough. It feeds itself endlessly. You wake up with it, a heaviness in your chest, before you've even gotten out of bed. It sits on your shoulders as you pull on your beige dress and check the window for watchers. It's in the way you move, small, cautious, always glancing over your shoulder. The fear is not just yours, it's in the air, thick as fog, breathed in and out by everyone around you. It creeps through the village, invisible but powerful. Fear makes people generous and cruel by turns. They bring soup to the sick, but only after crossing themselves 3 times. They help repair a fence, but they're sure to tell you later not to touch their tools. The moment something goes wrong, a bad harvest, a sudden storm, a cow refusing to give milk, fear bubbles up, searching for a place to land. At church, the sermons are heavy with it. The minister talks of hellfire and temptation, of the devil lurking just beyond the edge of the woods, waiting for a weak soul to stumble. You see people shifting uncomfortably on the benches, everyone quietly taking notes on who looks nervous, who bows their head too low, who keeps glancing out the window. The children fidget, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. Even their play is laced with caution. No new games, no new friends, just in case. Fear infects conversation. No one wants to speak first. Jokes are rare. Laughter is dangerous. When it does break out, it's too loud, too fast, and dies quickly, leaving a silence that's worse than before. Compliments are measured, questions are loaded. You look tired. Have you been sleeping well? That's a lovely shawl. Where did you get it? Every innocent comment has an edge, an implication. You answer carefully, never offering more than you must. You begin to notice the little rituals everyone performs, tossing a pinch of salt over their shoulder, marking doorways with a cross, hanging sprigs of herbs above the hearth. People mutter prayers under their breath, quick and urgent whenever a black cat crosses the road or the wind changes suddenly. You do it too, just to fit in. Better safe than sorry. Fear turns people into shadows of themselves. Your neighbour, who once laughed with you over spilled cider, now crosses the street to avoid you. She's afraid you might curse her crops, or maybe just afraid that being seen with you could put her own family at risk. Fear makes everyone smaller, quieter, less trusting. Friendships shrink to thin lines. Alliances are temporary, shifting like sand. You see it in your family too. Your children ask more questions, worry over things they used to ignore. Your partner keeps the doors locked tight, checks them twice before bed. Meals are eaten in silence, eyes darting to the window at every sound. The house feels smaller every day, the walls pressing in as if they too are afraid of what's coming, and through it all, you carry your own fear, a fear of being noticed, of being overlooked, of saying the wrong thing, of saying nothing at all. You worry about being too helpful or not helpful enough, about being too kind or too cold. There's no safety in the middle. The middle ground is just where suspicion gathers before deciding which side you're on. At night, you lie awake listening to the wind, wondering who else is awake, wondering what the morning will bring. Fear is a guest that never leaves. It grows in the silence, feeds on the uncertainty, multiplies in the dark. It turns neighbours into informants, friends into questioners, and ordinary days into a series of small, trembling trials. And in the end, fear does what it was always meant to do. It keeps everyone in line, keeps everyone guessing, keeps everyone just a little bit alone. In colonial America, fear is the strongest spell of all. The village gathers, children watch, adults whisper prayers they don't fully believe. This is not justice, it is reassurance. It starts with the ringing of the church bell, sharper and more insistent than on Sundays. The sound carries over fields and through open windows, calling everyone to the centre of the village. You hear the footsteps of neighbours converging, the murmur of nervous conversation, the click of doors closing behind people who are too afraid or too proud not to be seen. There is no question of whether you will attend. In colonial America, absence is as damning as guilt. You move toward the crowd, feeling the uneasy pull of curiosity and dread. This isn't the first time you've seen punishment handed out in public, and it won't be the last. But today, it feels closer. The air itself seems thicker, bristling with the knowledge that someone will be made an example. The crowd makes space for you as you arrive, not because they want you near, but so they can keep an eye on you. The accused is marched forward, sometimes trembling, sometimes stubbornly defiant. She could be anyone, an old friend, a neighbour, the woman who once shared her firewood when your own ran low. Now she stands alone, her hands tied, her eyes darting from face to face. She is the story everyone will tell for weeks, months, maybe years. The one who got caught. Children jostle for the best view, their excitement barely hidden. To them, it's a break in routine, a spectacle, something to be whispered about in the schoolyard. They don't understand the gravity, only the thrill. Their mothers pull them close, whispering warnings. Don't look too closely. Don't ask questions. Remember what happens to girls who don't listen. But the children look anyway, wide-eyed and unblinking, learning lessons that will shape how they view the world. Adults stand in clusters, their faces grave but hungry for details. They whisper to each other, not prayers for mercy but quiet judgments and little bits of gossip like trading cards. Did you see what she wore? I heard she confessed everything. Her family always was strange. The men puff themselves up, arms folded, pretending they're here for justice, but you can see the relief in their eyes. It isn't them up there, not today. The minister steps forward, reciting solemn words about sin, redemption, and the necessity of order. The constable explains the charges, often vague, often absurd. Suspicion of witchcraft, speaking ill of neighbours, possession of unexplained herbs. It doesn't matter that everyone has herbs or that everyone complains about their neighbours. What matters is the performance, the ritual of condemnation, the comfort of certainty. The punishment itself varies. Sometimes it's a public shaming, the stocks or a whipping post. Sometimes it's a fine or banishment, or, if fear has whipped the crowd into a proper frenzy, something final. Through it all, the crowd watches with a strange mixture of horror and fascination. Even those who claim to hate the spectacle can't look away. They need to see that the threat is real, that the boundary between safe and accused is visible, tangible, enforceable. You stand in the back, heart pounding, barely breathing. You feel the unspoken message tightening around the square like a noose. This is what happens. This is how you keep your place. This is how you keep your children safe. Justice isn't the goal. It's comfort. Not for the accused, but for everyone else. When it's over, the crowd dissolves as quickly as it formed. People hurry home, their voices low, their eyes a little harder. No one lingers to help the punished. No one speaks the accused's name unless it's in a whisper. The children are quiet now, clutching their mother's hands, already sensing how fragile safety is. That night, you sit by your fire and try not to think about what you saw. But you do, because you have to. Because in colonial America, the real lesson of public punishment isn't about the accused at all. It's about the rest of you, learning, again, how to blend in, how to behave, how to make sure that next time the crowd is watching someone else. The fire isn't about punishment, it's about control, about restoring order, about convincing everyone else to behave. The crowd gathers as the pyre is built, timbers stacked carefully, bundles of kindling arranged just so, the whole village participating in a grim ballet of busy hands and averted eyes. There's a strange quiet in the air, broken only by the nervous shuffling of feet and the occasional hollow cough. Everyone knows what comes next, and no one dares look away. It is not enough to hear about these things. You must witness them, must feel their heat on your face, must be reminded that safety is earned by obedience and belonging. The victim, who was a neighbour, a helper, maybe even a friend, stands alone, hands bound, eyes vacant. All the evidence that brought her here has been carefully rehearsed and repeated. It wasn't about what she did, but what her fate will do for the rest of you. The lesson must be public, dramatic, unforgettable. Children are kept close by their parents' sides, both protected and indoctrinated. This is what happens when you don't behave, says a stern whisper, meant as much for the children as for anyone within earshot. The message settles deep. The memory will stay with them far longer than any bedtime story. The minister prays loudly, voice rising above the silence. The prayer is not for the soul of the condemned, not really, but for the souls of the onlookers, the souls that must be kept in line, made to understand the consequences of stepping outside the circle. The fire is lit, slow at first, then hungrily consuming the dry wood. Smoke billows, dark and bitter, stinging the eyes, forcing everyone to blink away tears they will later pretend were never there. This is not about justice. If it were, there would be room for doubt, mercy, hesitation. Instead, everything is ritual, performance, a necessary evil, some will say, to keep evil at bay. The actual crime, if there was one, has long since vanished beneath the weight of communal anxiety. Now, only the spectacle remains. The punishment is an exclamation point at the end of a story written by fear and retold by every witness for years to come. You watch as the fire does its work. You feel the crowd tense and shudder as the smoke grows thicker. In the end, the heat forces people to step back, but not too far. No one wants to look like they care too much. No one wants to look like they don't care at all. The safest place is in the middle, eyes lowered, lips moving in silent prayers that they're not the next target. As the flames die down, there's a kind of release in the crowd, a shared exhale, a guilty sense of relief. The village feels newly cleansed, boundaries redrawn, the threat contained. For now, for a little while. And that's the real function of the fire, to convince the village that order has been restored, that nothing bad will happen so long as everyone remembers this lesson. It's a warning sent up in smoke, a contract rewritten in ash. Later, as you walk home, the smell of burning clings to your clothes, your hair, the inside of your throat. You will try to wash it away, but it will linger. Because burning isn't just about punishing one person. It's about branding the whole village with fear. It's about making sure that, for a long, long time, no one even thinks about stepping out of line. Afterward, the village is quieter. For a while. People sleep easier knowing it wasn't them. Yet. The air is different the next morning. Heavier, but also lighter. Like the hush after a storm that leaves everything both washed clean and slightly ruined. Doors open cautiously. The usual clatter of children's feet in the muddy lanes is replaced with a tense, careful silence. For a few hours, maybe even a day or two, the village moves a little slower, as if no one is quite sure how loud they're allowed to be. People go about their chores with extra diligence, eyes low, words chosen carefully. Yesterday's fire still hangs in the air, a sour metallic scent that refuses to dissipate. It clings to your shawl and lingers in your hair, a reminder that even inside your home, you can't quite escape what happened outside it. The ashes are swept up, but the story drifts through every conversation. You notice that people are a little more polite, at least for now. The woman who usually snaps at you over the price of eggs simply nods and moves on. The miller's apprentice, who often mutters under his breath about your strange ways, looks right past you as if you're invisible. For a short time, the instinct to accuse goes into hiding, replaced by the instinct to survive. No one wants to be the first to start the next rumour, not yet. In church, the prayers are a little longer. The silence is deeper. The minister's sermon hovers on the edge of comfort and caution. Let us all be grateful for God's mercy and mindful of his judgment. He doesn't have to mention names. Everyone knows what he means. The benches creak as people shift, hearts heavy but grateful to be on the right side of the story. At home, families discuss what happened in hushed tones after dark. Children ask questions, some simple, some chillingly astute. Why did she have to go? Will it happen again? How do we know if someone is bad? Parents answer as best they can, all the while teaching lessons that are only half-truths. We must all behave. Mind your manners. Don't stand out. The children listen, learning early that survival is a matter of blending in. The fear hasn't disappeared. It's simply been given somewhere to rest. The village tells itself that the problem is solved, the evil expunged, the danger past. People feel safer, but only because the boundaries of danger have been redrawn a little farther away from themselves. They share small comforts, grateful looks, gentle pats on the shoulder. We did what we had to. It was for the good of the village. It's a temporary peace, but a peace nonetheless. Yet beneath the calm, anxiety ferments. Everyone remembers what it felt like to be watched, to be weighed and measured and found wanting. The memory of accusation lingers in every shadow, waiting for a new reason to rise. When a cow goes dry, or a storm blows in, or a child wakes crying in the night, the old questions begin to bubble up again. Are we safe? For how long? As the days pass, the village returns to its usual rhythms. Gossip resumes, chores pile up, and the next minor scandal threatens to steal the spotlight. But the lesson remains. Silence is safety. Conformity is comfort. Curiosity is dangerous. The price of sleep is someone else's nightmare. So for now, people sleep easier. The village is quieter. The story settles heavy and unfinished, waiting for the wind to shift. And every heart, even as it dares to rest, listens for the first new whisper, already knowing how easily quiet can shatter and how quickly peace can turn to fear again. Years later, people begin to realize something went wrong, not because they suddenly grew kind, but because the fear burned too many people too quickly. It doesn't happen all at once. There is no single sunrise where the village wakes up, blinks at the morning light, and decides to put down their pitchforks. Instead, it creeps in slowly, like mist returning to the fields after a rain. Time passes. Fields are planted and harvested. The faces in the village change, some quietly, others abruptly. The memory of the fires and the accusations fades, but only on the surface. Underneath, everyone remembers. At first, the change is subtle, a certain heaviness in the way people look at each other, a hesitation before repeating a rumour. The loudest voices, the ones who led the accusations, seem a little quieter, perhaps a little more tired. The village has lost too many, mothers, daughters, friends, people who are necessary if not beloved. There are fewer hands to help with the harvest, fewer women at the well. The work piles up and the emptiness grows. Children grow older and start to ask uncomfortable questions. Why did Goody Barker leave? Why don't we visit Aunt Mercy's house anymore? Adults answer with silence or uneasy explanations. It was a hard time. Things were different then. Some try to change the subject, but the questions don't go away. New ministers arrive, men who did not live through the madness. They preach sermons about forgiveness, about unity, about moving on. Sometimes they even hint, softly, carefully, that mistakes were made. The old rituals fade a little. No more witch cakes, no more searching for marks, no more midnight meetings at the magistrate's house. People still gossip, of course, but the sharpness is dulled, the eagerness to accuse replaced by something like caution. The lessons learned are not ones of mercy, but of exhaustion. It's not that the villagers become braver or more loving. It's that fear, when overfed, becomes self-defeating. The suspicion turns on itself. The last rounds of accusations weren't just against the odd, the lonely, the outspoken. They started to touch the respected, the wealthy, the powerful. It became clear that no one was truly safe. When everyone is suspect, no one can function. So people start letting things slide. The new neighbour with odd habits is just eccentric. The girl who talks to birds is imaginative. A sick cow is just a sick cow. There are whispers of regret, but never in public. No one stands in the village square and says, "We were wrong." Regret, if it exists, is private, a glance at an empty house, a memory that won't fade. Some families move away, unable to live where their loved ones were lost. Others stay, haunted but silent. No one builds statues or sings songs of apology, but the change is real. Over time, the fear dulls. When something strange happens, the urge to blame is still there, but it's tempered by a new wariness. "Let's not start that again," someone will say, and for once others nod, for people remember the faces that disappeared, the nights filled with shouts and torchlight, the days when even the innocent felt hunted. That memory lingers, quietly shaping behaviour for generations. Eventually stories change. The old tales of witches and curses are told with a kind of embarrassed distance, as if they happened somewhere else to someone else. Children listen, wide-eyed, but adults shake their heads and say, "We don't do things that way anymore." Time moves on, and the fires become legend. Warnings whispered less as threats and more as reminders. So it ends, not with forgiveness, not with justice, but with fatigue. The village learns that there are limits even to fear, that too many burned bridges leave you standing alone. And in the end, what stops the madness isn't a change of heart, but the simple, stubborn need to survive. The fear burns itself out, leaving behind a silence that is, at last, just quiet. You were never powerful, never magical, never dangerous, just human. And that, it turns out, was enough. In the quiet of morning, before the first log snaps in the hearth, you move through your routines with a practiced hand. You fetch water, knead dough, brush crumbs from the table. There is nothing extraordinary in these motions, nothing that would make the world pause. Your life, like so many others, is made of small acts of care and endurance. You tend to children, help neighbours, save the last piece of bread for someone else. You laugh when you can, sigh when you must, and carry on. And yet, it is this very ordinariness that becomes extraordinary in a village bent by suspicion. Being plain, being steady, being good, these should have been enough to make you invisible, but here they make you vulnerable. When the world is looking for witches, even kindness is a mark against you. A gentle word, a shared loaf, a healing herb, each one a thread woven into a web of doubt. You look around and see others just like you. Women mending clothes by the fire, men returning from the fields with muddy boots and tired shoulders, children chasing chickens and muddying hems. No one is casting spells, no one is calling down storms. Most days everyone is simply trying to survive. But the ordinary, it turns out, is suspicious. Too much solitude? You're aloof. Too many friends? You're manipulating. You help with a difficult birth and it goes well. Must be unnatural skill. The baby is weak. Maybe you meant for it to be. Every innocent act is loaded with meaning once the whispers start. Ordinary people become suspects, their stories rewritten by those who need a reason for fear. You remember how easily life could turn. One day you're trading eggs and gossip in the market. The next you're being watched for signs. Did you greet someone too warmly? Did you frown at the wrong moment? Did you look tired, or angry, or distracted? Every face in the village becomes a mirror for someone else's anxiety. And the truth is, most of those accused were like you. They were mothers, daughters, aunts, sisters. They sang lullabies, nursed the sick, laughed with their friends. They worked hard. They were poor or unlucky or outspoken. Some were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. But all were human, defined not by magic or malice, but by the ordinary courage of living each day under the weight of suspicion. Even after the flames die down and the whispers fade, the ordinary carries on. Fields still need tending. Bread must be baked. Children will outgrow shoes and the weather will always threaten the harvest. The village slowly returns to its rhythms, pretending that everything is as it was before. But the scars remain, not just on the ground where fires once burned, but in the hearts of everyone who watched, everyone who survived, everyone who remembers. The lesson is not about evil lurking in the shadows or magic in the blood. It's about the power of fear, the danger of isolation, and how easy it is to lose sight of humanity when searching for something or someone to blame. Ordinary lives became extraordinary only because someone decided they needed to be. And in the end, it was enough to be human, enough to be seen, enough, somehow, to be called dangerous. That is the tragedy and the warning left behind, that innocence is not armour, and that the most remarkable thing about most of those lost to the fire was just how ordinary, how familiar, how very much like everyone else they truly were. Your name starts appearing in places it shouldn't, on scraps of paper, in whispered lists, in the margins of sermons where ink presses harder around certain words. No one tells you directly, but you can feel the shift. Conversations stop when you enter a room. Pens scratch a little longer when your name is mentioned, as if writing it down makes the fear feel official. It starts innocently enough. The minister pauses mid-sermon, glancing at his notes. You catch your name, just for a second, in his mouth, the syllables clipped and careful. Later, at the market, you spot a scrap of parchment, someone's shopping list perhaps, but when you stoop to retrieve it, you see it's something else, a short column of names, including your own, with none of the usual groceries. The list is crumpled but legible, and as you glance around, you realize no one is looking you in the eye. Word travels faster than the wind, but paper is slower, deliberate, damning, physical. The written word feels heavier than a whisper, and as lists multiply, so does your unease. You hear second-hand that the magistrate keeps a record of suspicious behaviour. He writes it in the big leather-bound book on his desk, the one everyone pretends not to know about. What goes in the book is rarely forgotten. Children whisper about the list of the watched, an unofficial inventory of anyone the grown-ups find unsettling. Your name is there, they say, right alongside the woman who talks to her dog and the man who never goes to church. At first, it's almost laughable, but the joke sours quickly. Lists become a shorthand for blame. It's on the list, people say, and the list itself becomes an authority, greater even than the elders or the constable. Soon you find that lists are everywhere. The church keeps one. Absences, donations, remarks made during meetings. The market has another. Who paid on time, who paid in barter, who never pays at all. Even the midwife has her own, tracking who brings gifts, who asks odd questions, who seems nervous. Each list started as a way to keep order, but order becomes accusation in the blink of an eye. You notice how people handle paper now. The constable's wife grips her ledger with white knuckles when you approach. folding the page over before you can see what's written there. The shopkeeper tucks receipts into his apron pocket a little too quickly. Even your friends hesitate to hand you a note or a recipe, as if words on a page might burn your fingers. The feeling of being watched intensifies. You move through the village acutely aware of your place in the written world, how every action, every mistake might be added to a permanent record you will never see but cannot escape. You find yourself rehearsing your words, retracing your steps, wondering what people will write about you tomorrow. Did you return the borrowed skillet? Did you smile at the wrong moment? Every small interaction becomes a possible entry. At home, you grow wary of your own handwriting. You keep fewer notes, burn old recipes, let your correspondence with your sister lapse. Even memory feels risky. If someone were to search your home and find too many letters, too many lists, what would they say? Best to be forgetful, unrecorded, as invisible as possible. But the paper trail only grows longer. The more fear takes hold, the more the village writes. Lists are revised, copied, shared, hidden, and sometimes even stolen. You hear rumours of new names being added, old names being crossed off, always in secret, always with the threat of exposure hanging over everyone. Being on a list becomes a warning to everyone else. Behave, conform, do not draw attention. You realise at last that fear has become its own institution, preserved in ink, authorized by silence, multiplied in margins. In colonial America, paper isn't just for prayers or proclamations, it's for suspicion too. And as you lie awake at night, you know that the pen is not just mightier than the sword, it's also sharper, quieter, and impossible to outrun. You're questioned gently at first. Calm voices, concerned faces. They ask you to simply explain yourself, which is funny, because there is no correct explanation left. Every answer creates two more questions, and silence is treated as evidence. It always starts with a chair, a simple, uncomfortable chair, placed just far enough from the fire to make the room drafty, just close enough to the wall for you to notice there's no real escape. The people who call you in, maybe the constable, maybe the minister, maybe the neighbour who's suddenly become official, are very careful with their words. They smile in a strained way, hands folded, heads tilted, as if they've just come to borrow a cup of sugar or discuss the weather. We only want to understand, they assure you, as if this is a friendly chat and not the opening act of a grim performance. Their questions begin with the ordinary. How did you spend yesterday? Did you notice anything strange? Who was with you when the neighbour's cow grew ill? You answer, giving the details you can remember, watching their pens hover over parchment. They write everything down, even when you hesitate. Especially when you hesitate. Every pause becomes a clue in their eyes. The tone is always gentle, almost loving. Of course, we know you're a good woman. Everyone says so. But then comes the inevitable but, and with it, a new set of questions. Why did you leave your house after dark last week? Why did you lend herbs to Goody Brown? Why didn't you join the hymn on Sunday? The list is endless, every answer feeding a tree of suspicions. You notice how they lean in when you speak, how they trade glances when you mention something they hadn't considered before. Sometimes your answers contradict what someone else already said. Not because you're lying, but because memories are faulty and days blur together. Still, each contradiction is logged, each difference an opportunity for the questions to double back on themselves. If you try to defend yourself, I was just helping a friend, I promise. The tone shifts almost imperceptibly. No one is accusing you, they say, even though you both know they are. If you go quiet, they press harder, offering you water, urging you to take your time. Don't be afraid. If there's anything you want to get off your chest, now's the time. Your fear is proof. Your calmness is proof. You can't win. There is a script to these conversations, one everyone knows but no one acknowledges. The real point is not to get at the truth, but to wear you down. If you slip, if you get angry or frustrated or tired, your reaction is carefully written into their records, showed signs of agitation, appeared evasive, was tearful and defiant. All of it will be read aloud later, with the tone of someone who has seen all this before. After hours of this, the room feels smaller, the air is heavy. You replay every word you've said, every detail you might have missed, every look you gave that could be misunderstood. They thank you for your honesty, assure you that you're free to go. But you know that you are less free now than when you arrived. Every polite question has left a mark, every answer a possible rope to tie you tighter to suspicion. When you return home, you feel hollowed out. You wonder who will be called next, and what they will say about you when it's their turn. The interrogation was gentle, almost kind, but underneath you sense the sharpness, like a knife carefully hidden under a napkin, waiting for the moment when all these soft words become something much, much harder. Night is no longer rest, it's rehearsal. You lie awake listening for footsteps, for the scrape of boots, for the knock that never comes soon enough to end the waiting. Dreams twist into confessions you never made, and you wake up sweating, wondering if even your thoughts are safe. Your bed, such as it is, offers little comfort now. The straw mattress creaks and rustles beneath you, a chorus of tiny betrayals every time you shift. Shadows gather in the corners of your small room, multiplying your fears as darkness presses against the thin window pane. The cold creeps under the door and over your skin, but the chill in your heart has nothing to do with the weather. You stare at the ceiling, tracking the slow dance of moonlight and cloud, and try to remember a time when nighttime meant respite. Now it means waiting. Every sound sharpens your senses. Was that the wind rattling the latch, or someone testing the door? You listen for voices outside, the low drone of neighbours plotting or the measured tread of the constable's boots. The only thing worse than hearing footsteps is not hearing them, because then your mind fills in the gaps. Your body aches with fatigue, but your mind will not let go. Each time you drift towards sleep, your thoughts spiral into scenes of accusation. You see yourself standing before the magistrate, searching for words you don't have, while familiar faces, once friendly, nod gravely at every stammer. In dreams, you admit to crimes you never committed, inventing details to please the faceless crowd. You wake with a gasp, clutching the blanket to your chest as if it might shield you from suspicion. The boundaries between dream and reality blur. Some nights, you hear a knock on the door and freeze, heart pounding. Silence stretches on, and you start to doubt whether the sound was real at all. You try to slow your breathing, to quiet your racing thoughts, but your body holds on to fear long after your mind knows it's unreasonable. You hear the night birds call, and even their voices sound like warnings. You try to comfort yourself with routine, folding and refolding your shawl, counting the cracks in the ceiling, whispering prayers you barely believe. But nothing stops your mind from cataloguing every mistake you made that day, every sideways glance, every word spoken or not spoken. You replay conversations in your head, wondering if someone misunderstood your intent, if something you said will be used against you come morning. Sleep, when it finally arrives, is shallow and fitful. Dreams twist around the anxieties of the day. Sometimes you see faces, friends, family, neighbours, accusing you, turning away. Other times, you run and run, but never get anywhere, always feeling the eyes at your back. When you wake, it's with a gasp, sweat cold on your brow, your heart thumping against your ribs. Morning comes too soon, and you're already exhausted. You rise with the sun because not rising is suspicious too. And so you begin again, muscles aching, mind clouded, nerves frayed. You step out into the world, knowing that fatigue will make you more vulnerable, slower to smile, quicker to snap. easier to doubt yourself. You wonder if anyone else is sleeping, truly sleeping. Does your neighbour toss and turn behind her locked door? Does the minister dream of flames and faces? Is the constable as afraid as the rest of you? Maybe that's the greatest harm of all. Suspicion not only destroys trust, but it steals even the comfort of sleep, turning every night into another test you can't pass. And so, night after night, you lie in the dark, rehearsing your innocence for an audience you hope never arrives. In colonial America, sleep is just one more thing that can be taken from you. Another quiet corner where fear has found its home. Someone explains the logic behind the accusations. It sounds thoughtful, structured, almost intelligent. Floating tests, devil's marks, spectral evidence. It's all delivered with confidence, which somehow makes it worse. You realize this isn't ignorance, it's imagination wearing authority. There is a peculiar comfort in how reasonable it all seems, at least to the people who invented it. The magistrate stands at the head of the room, hands folded, brow furrowed, as he lectures the village on the known signs of witchery. His voice is grave, his manner deliberate, and the crowd listens as though he's revealing the secrets of the universe, not the fevered daydreams of frightened minds. He talks about the infamous swimming test. Everyone nods along as he explains that pure water, being a holy substance, will reject evil, so the accused is bound and tossed into a pond. If you sink, you are innocent, though you might drown. If you float, the water has rejected you, and you are clearly in league with the devil. The villagers lean forward, considering this. It has the ring of logic if you don't think too hard. The magistrate does not mention that a heavy coat and fear will make anyone float, or that survival means a different kind of death. Then there are the devil's marks, the experts, midwives, constables, and the occasional self-appointed examiner search for anything unusual, a mole, a scar, a birthmark, even a freckle. They prod and poke with solemn faces, announcing that the devil marks his servants. You try to explain that everyone has blemishes, but the room is already convinced. If a mark is found, it is proof. If none is found, the devil is hiding it. Evidence everywhere and nowhere at all. Spectral evidence is the latest innovation. Someone claims to have seen your ghostly shape tormenting them in a dream, and this somehow becomes admissible. You listen, jaw clenched, as people debate your nightly activities, not what you've done, but what someone swears they saw you do while half asleep. Logic has not only left the building, it's taken the furniture too. There are more tests, all with a veneer of scholarship. Recite the Lord's Prayer without error, bake a witch cake, touch the afflicted child and see if their spasms stop. Each experiment is explained with the language of the learned, cloaked in the authority of men who have read books and spoken with other men who have read other books. You almost want to admire the creativity, if your life didn't depend on their conclusions. The worst part is the certainty. The people running these tests believe in their own intelligence. They see themselves as protectors, not persecutors. When you fail, it's proof. When you pass, it's a trick. Every outcome fits the theory, because the theory was never meant to be tested. It was meant to be proven over and over on whoever is most convenient. You wonder how much of it they truly believe. Some seem genuinely terrified, clutching their Bibles, refusing to look you in the eye. Others look bored, going through the motions because it's expected. A few, always the most dangerous, look delighted, as if the spectacle is a reward in itself. In the end, the science of nonsense serves one purpose: to make fear feel respectable, to wrap chaos in ritual, to transform the unpredictable into something that can be measured, debated, written down, and worst of all, justified. Every ridiculous rule, every contradictory outcome becomes another brick in the fortress of suspicion, And you, standing in the middle of it all, can only marvel at the power of imagination, how it builds prisons, writes laws, and burns people alive, all while calling itself wisdom. In colonial America, the only thing more dangerous than ignorance is the kind of certainty that invents its own evidence, and then calls it science. There's a moment when the room changes. You feel it before anyone speaks. The decision has already been made, and everything after is just ceremony. People stop looking at you as a person and start looking at you as a lesson. It's subtle at first. Maybe someone glances away when you meet their eyes. Maybe a whisper dies out the instant you enter. Maybe the magistrate who once called you by your name starts referring to you as the accused. There's a coldness in the air, something that settles on your skin and burrows deep, making you shiver even though the fire is still burning. You notice the shift in posture. Backs stiffen, arms fold, feet point toward the exit. Voices flatten, all the emotion ironed out until even the kindest words land with the weight of a closing door. You try to reach out to a friend, a neighbour, anyone, but their responses come a beat too late. Their hands twitch away just before you can touch them. The room becomes a jury box, and you are the case they've already solved. The elders speak in low, steady tones, but no one really listens. They're only waiting for the words they expect, the phrases that confirm the story they've been rehearsing. You answer questions you've already answered, explain things that need no explanation, but your words fall into the silence and vanish. The facts are irrelevant. The room has moved past curiosity, past doubt. Now it wants only certainty. Children sense it too. They shrink into their mother's skirts or watch you with wide, unblinking eyes. Someone mutters a prayer. Someone else clears their throat too loudly. You see old friends standing shoulder to shoulder, not meeting your gaze, as if proximity alone might make them suspect. The walls feel closer, the fire hotter, the distance between you and everyone else suddenly insurmountable. The magistrate reads a list of accusations, voice steady and detached. You recognize the stories, the sick cow, the spoiled bread, the nightmares and sudden storms. You know some are fabrications, others misunderstandings, but it doesn't matter. No one is listening for truth. They are listening for the signal to agree, to close the circle, to end the tension with a collective act. You realize in that instant that your fate was never about proof or innocence. It was about restoring order, easing fear, providing a scapegoat so the rest could sleep soundly. You are not goody so-and-so anymore. You are the reason the village can convince itself that chaos is contained, that evil can be named and banished. A hush falls. Someone coughs. The constable asks the question everyone has been waiting for, but the answer is already written in their faces. The decision isn't spoken, not really. It's enacted, through the shuffle of feet as the room shifts, the set of jaws, the final, quiet refusal to look at you as anything but a problem to be solved. Afterward there will be words, formal, official, heavy with regret. We had no choice. For the good of the community, let this be a lesson. But you see the relief in their eyes, the collective exhale as the burden of uncertainty is lifted and handed to you. You stand in the middle of it all, surrounded but utterly alone. You know you have become something larger and smaller than yourself, a warning story, a chapter in the village's long history of fear. Everything that follows, the sentence, the punishment, the long walk home, will be rote, performed for the sake of tradition. The real decision was made in the silence, in the breath before the verdict, when everyone agreed to stop seeing you and start seeing what they needed you to be. And so, the lesson is set. The village can carry on, comforted by the story it tells itself. You are gone, but your absence becomes a kind of presence, a reminder of what happens when the crowd decides. In colonial America, sometimes the verdict is spoken aloud, and sometimes it's only whispered in the moment when everyone finally stops pretending there's any doubt left at all. So now the day grows quiet again. The fires burn low. The crowd has gone home. The village exhales, convinced it has done something necessary, something righteous, something that will keep the world from spinning out of control for just a little while longer. And you are left behind in the story, not as a monster, not as a warning, but as a person who lived through a time that was small, frightened, and desperately searching for answers it didn't yet have. Colonial America was not filled with magic. It was filled with fear. Fear of disease, fear of hunger, fear of God's silence, fear of neighbours. And when fear had nowhere else to go, it landed on women who were visible, vulnerable, and convenient. Tonight's story isn't about witches. It's about what happens when panic becomes policy, when rumour hardens into law, when justice is replaced by reassurance, and when ordinary lives are sacrificed so everyone else can sleep a little easier. And yet, even in all of this, people endured. They woke up each day. They worked. They cared for children. They tended fires and gardens and one another. They lived ordinary lives in an extraordinary storm of suspicion. Their resilience wasn't loud. It wasn't celebrated. It was quiet, stubborn, and human. So tonight, as you settle into a clean bed with safe water, locked doors, and a world that no longer burns people for being inconvenient, maybe take a moment of gratitude, not just for modern comforts, but for clarity, for skepticism, for the ability to question fear instead of feeding it. Because history may be terrifying and absurd and deeply unfair, but it also shows us something else. People survive. People learn. And slowly, painfully, the world gets a little better at choosing reason over fire. So take a slow breath. Let the past fade back into darkness where it belongs. And rest easy, knowing that tonight at least, no one is watching the way you walk. Good night.